Tim, I need you to close one of your Riverside tabs.
Alone.
We're recording.
This is
Boy.
practically pastoring.
I only have one open.
I don't know what to tell you. And we're back. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Practically Pastoring. I am here with all of the fellas. Well, most of the fellas. We're going around the horn. We've got Jeff Simpson up in Baltimore.
Howdy. I like how you said around the horn for the baseball coach. Nice.
I was referring to our different heads, how it looks like the
I got
old
4 games this week.
ESPN show
Crazy
around
week.
the horn. Wait, you've got games or you're
No,
coaching
the
games?
high school boys have 4 games, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's a lot for a high school team because of pitch counts and all that stuff. So
That is a lot, yeah. That's a lot for a college team, 4 games in a week. Down in Sumter, South Carolina, and by down, I mean north of me, Delmar Pete.
But down from Jeff. It's good to see
This
you
is
guys.
very true.
Still more southern than you, Andrew.
Far more southern than
Yeah,
Safety
yeah.
Harbor, Florida.
I
Culturally,
guess I am the Deep South representative on this pod, right?
it's kind of like, in the Old Testament when they're going up to Jerusalem, even though they're traveling south, same thing. Same thing. You've got to go down to Sumter, even if you're in Florida. And then in Trinity, Florida, I'm not going to call it Newport Richie, even though the post office does, Timothy Allen Miller.
How dare you? Miss you.
I'm here all by my lonesome, Andrew Larson in Safety Harbor, Florida, because Tim's got dad duty today, so we're doing this thing remotely instead of sitting next to each other, but that's okay. Today
But
we
you're
are
not actually
tackling.
alone, right? There's like
I'm
a
not-
bunch of kids in the building.
Yes, that sounds weird. Yes, there's, I think, 52 preschoolers in the building and a bunch of teachers and whatnot. So if I drop dead, someone will find me. That's
Nice.
what we're saying here.
Probably Miss Shirley first.
Probably. Maybe Glenn. We'll see. One of them would find me first. Or if I don't return a text message from my wife, she's just at the elementary school a block away. She'd come over. Well, today we are tackling a couple of messy real-world leadership situations that most pastors hope they never actually have to face, but a lot of us already have and will continue to as our ministries progress. So we've got one question about a staff member or elder who is being duplicitous with the congregation. Question 2 is about how to handle someone who is on that registry attending the church while balancing safety and oversight all at the same time. So we are getting into all kinds of the weeds this morning. So question 1 says, I am posting anonymously for Frank. Sorry, he's not here today, but also just because of the situation. Sorry for the long post, but there's some important details to note. Question. How would you address an issue that a staff member / elder lied to the congregation during a church meeting? Backstory, I'm a part-time associate pastor in my church. We had a church meeting the other night that was mainly focused on budget. Our executive pastor and elder was presenting the budget and going over the major changes. When time came for questions, a discussion started about the reduction in one of the ministry budgets. He explained the justification for the reduction and a follow-up question was asked if the ministry / team leader in question was included in the decision to decrease said budget. The executive pastor answered that it had been discussed with said leader and team. This ministry falls under my department, and I can tell you for a fact that this budget decision was not discussed with me prior to it being made, and I was just told about it after the fact. I bit my tongue during the meeting because I didn't want to cause division amongst the church and also didn't want to lash out in anger, but I'm now debating on how to address this. I know there's a side of the personal grievance that should be handled in a Matthew 18 style, but I'm more conflicted at the fact that he lied to and misled the church body. So I think the first thing you need to do is when you go to this person, you need to frame the issue clearly. This isn't just an issue about a disagreement or process or budget priorities. You need to present the dishonesty, or at the very least, a public statement that was misleading and materially untrue. I don't know if this is a one-on-one conversation right away, or if this is something that you bring the senior pastor with. I also don't know what your church governance is, whether or not you're an elder here as well. That might make things a little bit different. But when trust is fractured, and when trust is fractured publicly, and there's a meeting like this, something probably needs to be done publicly to restore and to amend this. I don't know if that's going to happen. Another thing that really is a red flag for me here is I lead congregational meetings. Now, we only do one congregational meeting a year, and by the time we are done presenting everything, everybody is in such a hurry to get out of that meeting. Most questions that are asked are asked by people who have a whole lot of skin in the game. So I would be curious as to who's asking this question. If you filled them in beforehand, hey, I wasn't addressed before this happened. Is this a ringer that's being brought in to confront this person? I feel like we're not getting all of the information, but that's just kind of my 2 cents and what my spidey
first thing
senses
I
are
thought,
telling
too.
me is that, this might be a ringer brought in to ask this specific
Meaning,
question.
like, this person asking the question was asked to ask the question, right? That's
Yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what I thought too.
Tim, what you got?
Yeah, I think you had some good follow-up questions there. And there's some things that we can talk about like head on with this. There's also some things that could be done in the future to prevent things like this. One thing that we do that I've come to really appreciate is we actually will send a copy of the budget out when we announce the congregational meeting, and we say, hey, you guys know our time is limited. So if you have any questions, could you please reach out ahead of time? We'd love to sit down with you, grab coffee, answer any questions you might have ahead of the meeting. Obviously, if a question pops up, we're there to answer it publicly. But for the most part, if there's a serious question like this, we probably would have already handled that privately, so it wasn't in a public setting. I do think that you're going to have to address this one Matthew 18 style. I know that was already spoken of in the question. It needs to be direct. It needs to be personal. It doesn't mean you downplay it. Like, this is a real issue if this actually happened the way that the person said it's happening. I don't know that it needs to be anything more than, here's what you said in the meeting. That didn't happen. Help me understand why you said that. Like, I don't know that you have to go any further than that, than just address the problem that actually happened right there. There's probably a lot more here. You're right, Andrew, that we don't know about. But I think you've got to start with that Matthew 18 spirit. I also saw this question on Facebook and was reading through the comments. And I did appreciate a lot of the comments and the feedback. There was some in there that was, giving them the benefit of the doubt and things like that. So I think there's a way to handle this with grace, but not gloss over it. I still think you need to go head on and tackle this.
But you also need to realize that the decision's been made. The budget's not going to get restored. These are two different issues. The budget,
yeah, this is about relationship building now. Yeah.
The budget issue and the communication issue are not the same thing. And so,
Totally
as
agree.
the former youth pastor who had his budget cut, I remember thinking, if I can get him with this zinger, they'll give me that extra $3,500. And
Nope.
no,
It's gone.
that money's gone. It's been allocated to the quilting ministry or whatever else. You're not getting it back.
But also in a staff meeting before the budget goes out, like, I'm making sure all of my leads and team members know, here's what your budget is before it gets presented to the congregation. So I don't know, there's a lot of communication things here that I've got.
That's
questions
definitely
on.
not a room for
Because
surprises.
Yeah,
It
but
shouldn't
we also
be.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
we also have a bivocational associate pastor situation. Who knows what meetings were had without him? There's a whole lot of factors here. And again, I'm not discrediting what the original poster has said, but you don't know that they're in staff meeting together each and every week when you're
Right.
and
that can easily fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
It shouldn't, but somebody could have a discussion and then forget to send an email, and then we get to this meeting and they thought the email was sent by the assistant and it wasn't, and it just can really fall through the cracks really easy.
Yeah. My gut thing is start from the inside and work your way out with this one. In other words, I'm gonna check myself. I think one of the things I often overlook, whenever I get offended or something, is why, when a mistake is made, you're either going to go to two places. You're going to go to suspicion or grace. And generally, your opinion of that person determines where you're going to go with that. So the fact you initially went to suspicion makes me think there may not be as good of a relationship
good.
there. Yeah, as that what could be helpful. So if you did go to suspicion, then I would just do some internal reflection, because there may be some deeper things that you actually need to talk to that are way more important than this, right? Because if there's some underlying thing, he left you out of a party invite, or you took it personal. I mean, I don't know. We're all human. I've done it. So once you get that, if you've checked through that line, you're like, well, I did go to suspicion, but maybe you did grace and suspicion's kind of welled up. Also, I would say that you need to have that conversation, and I would be what Tim said, be gracious leaning into it and say, hey, listen, I realize there's a difference between like maybe poor wording and intentional deception. I don't want to think it was the second one. So can you help me understand what you were saying? And then, I've had to take this approach in a previous position, say, hey, maybe that information was conveyed, but somehow I got left out the loop. So that way it's a way of being gracious toward him, while at the same time saying, well, hey, next time we need to make sure this doesn't happen. But Matthew 18 is big, because I don't think this is a Galatians which chapter is in Galatians where, you have to withstand Peter to his face because he's doing it. But I don't think we're at that situation. This seems to be a lot deeper. And this is the biggest threat I see in this situation is the probable root of bitterness. So as far as long-term money stuff we can put in for it, just keep a trail of your receipts and show them next year, hey, this is how much the budget cost, right? But you don't want a year. A lot of bitterness can set in. So I would start inside and then work your way out to the final conversation with him. And definitely, I feel like it shouldn't have to be said, but let's just say it. This doesn't go anywhere else in the congregation, man. It doesn't go sideways to other staff. It doesn't get passively posted or written. You got to bottle this up. So for the sake of the kingdom.
Yeah, I would say one of the things that stuck out to me was it seems, based on the reading that we had of the situation, that this person has, and one of the possibilities, like Delmar was mentioning, you may have some past experiences with this person that cause you to mistrust them. It's very possible you have past experience at a totally different church or with a totally different person that is coloring the way that you're choosing to not trust this person. So the yellow or maybe red flag for me was that I didn't want to lash out in anger. At this point, just reading this, you don't have any reason to you don't have any justifiable anger yet, because you don't know why this person didn't communicate or miscommunicated. Like we've said already, your choice is to think they misspoke, which is not a reason for anger, or they are intentionally misleading the congregation, which then would be a reason to be angry about the somebody misleading God's church. So until you know that person intentionally misled, I don't think you have a reason to be justifiably angry. Actually, your anger in this situation would be sinful. So it was wise for you not to blow up a meeting and create more division. That's good. But I would dig down deep as to why did you go to anger first? Why did you go to, I didn't want to lash out in anger, which means you were feeling angry. I get the frustration, but that's a maturity thing where you have to go, wait a second. I know when I came to this church, the day before we would have board meetings here, I would have physiological responses because of the board meetings I was at the church before this. There were 6-hour-long elder meetings on Saturdays that went all day long. It was so divisive. It was
That
crazy.
sounds terrible.
It was terrible. It was crazy town.
What godly comes out of a 6-hour elder meeting anyway?
No, I mean, there was even an elder in that meeting who would like pull his pocket knife out and play with it during the meeting. And I'm like, I don't know what's happened. This is crazy. So when we would go to have meetings here, I would immediately start having those like physiological responses of fight or flight. I was mistrusting people. I was assuming they were like mad at me, and that was all just the stuff from the past church. So he didn't say anything about this, but I'm wondering that. Is there other relationships going on in your life that are stressful that you're kind of like projecting into this relationship? So all of those things are really important. Having said that, we have to deal with this now, because now you have a situation where the seed of distrust and, like Delmar said, bitterness has been planted. So you got to uproot it now. And so I think, like, I love what Delmar said, from the inside out. You got to do the work on you first and really explore, like, where is this mistrust coming from? Because that to me is the root here. You have discovered, maybe you didn't even realize it, but this situation has just like apocalyptically revealed to you, oh my gosh, I don't trust the executive pastor. And so now you have to deal with that, because if you can't trust that executive pastor, either you have to resign or he's going to have to get fired.
And by the way, you're a part-time associate pastor.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's a part-time executive pastor, but chances are he wins.
He's higher on the totem pole than you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's a situation where like he's a deceptive person and he's in the pastor's ear, you don't want to be part of that anyway. If it's a situation where the pastor can see through it, then let the Lord deal with that, and you lead your ministry well, and the deception will come out, and you got to trust the Lord. And I hate to tell you this, you can trust the Lord all you want, and sometimes you'll still lose that situation, but you can retain your own integrity. And that's what's really important. In the long run, you got to retain your own integrity and do what's right, and just, keep doing that, and then let the Lord do what he's going to do. And sometimes you will not see the answer to that. Sometimes you will end up leaving a church and that bad leader is still in charge there, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you just have to move on and maintain your integrity. So my biggest thing is like figuring out, where is this mistrust coming from at its root first.
I think this is something that you can take up the totem pole. You can go to the senior pastor, you can go to the elders, and you can say, hey, here's what I've perceived the situation to be. Can I get some clarity here? And if you don't get the answer that you want, which, let's be real, that happens far more often than any of us want to admit. We like to think, hey, I am the voice of justice and reason here. Of course, they're going to side with me. If they don't, the question becomes, can you still sit under the leadership there?
Right.
Because
Can you gladly follow the leadership?
yes,
Like willingly.
being in the role that you are in, you have placed yourself under their authority. And even when you think you're right and they're wrong, you have still placed yourself under their authority. And so the question becomes, can I keep a good conscience and place myself under their authority? Because the structure of the church, the structure that God has set over everything is that, and there are corrupt leaders all throughout church history, all throughout the history of God's people. That's an issue. But think about David, right? He isn't going to, this is obviously not a David and Saul situation. I hope you're not in a cave and that no one's pooping. Thank you. I appreciate that snicker.
No, that's good.
But even David's like, I'm not going to touch the Lord's anointed. Like, you have to trust that the leadership structure that exists is a leadership structure that exists for the glory of God. And when done right, it is going to glorify God and point people towards him. And so if you can no longer sit under that leadership structure, your call is not to be a reformer of whatever that church is. Your call is to peace out and find a leadership structure that you can sit under. And I don't know what that looks like in your context, but this is not going to necessarily end with things going your way. And if it doesn't go your way,
if you decide to resign, on the way out, you can't say, you know why I'm resigning? Because this guy misled the church and he lied to you in that meeting. You can't do that.
Yeah, that makes it real ugly.
You're really going to want to, but don't.
Tim, what you got?
I've been a part of congregational meetings most of my life, like for a very long time, multiple times a year. I've actually never heard anyone say, was the ministry leader notified before you cut their budget? Like, the assumption going into every meeting is always, of course, we've met with our ministry leader. So for that question to be asked raises
sounds like a setup to
some
me.
Concern. That's
ding,
all
ding, ding.
I'm not trying to accuse anyone. It just sounds odd to me.
Yep. That was
it almost makes me think that
thing.
maybe, okay, so you don't want to speculate, but the fact that that seed was planted for him to ask makes me think someone had already told someone else, they're going to cut our budget, and we weren't even asked. So then their other ally was like, did you ask the person? I mean, you hate to go that way, but if there is bitterness there, that's not beyond the purview of, and you know what, whether this guy did it or not, that has happened in church. People have gone into meetings with the guns loaded. There's plants out there. There's a reason in the Baptist church that everybody's aunt and uncle who hasn't been to church in 30 years but still on the rolls, they come to vote the pastor out.
They show up for the business meeting.
So that kind of stuff is not without the realm of possibility. And as a pastor, you just got to be aware. I love Tim. I want to shoot this up at my church. The whole idea of you talk to us beforehand, because a business meeting, in some respects, yes, there should be some information. It should go back and forth, but it's almost a performance evaluation of the church in the sense that if your church is doing it well, when you step in your performance evaluation, nothing should catch you off guard, right? Like those conversations should have already been happening. Business meeting is so we all hear it at the same place. Maybe get a little clarity.
This kind of
and
question,
because the state requires it.
This kind of question in a business meeting is like when a couple starts talking about their prenup. It's bad.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think that's really good, Del. I like that. Hey, do you know what else I like? Fellas, I got to tell you, I'm a big fan of church merch. It's merch for your church. I'm wearing a church merch t-shirt under my tie right now as we speak. I mean, not the plaid shirt. You get it. Here's the thing. We all need merch for our church. We have mugs that we give to visitors. We have t-shirts that we wear out in the community. Where do you get those? You get them at church merch. Yesterday, I had a couple in my office after church having the kind of conversation that you have in the pastor's office after a service. And in the middle of this pretty serious conversation, the wife said to me, Andrew, where did you get that mug? We are looking to order some mugs for an Airbnb that we own, and that is exactly what I'm looking for. And so I said, well, you need to go to promotionsguy.com, and promotionsguy.com has a separate section just for churches called church merch. They have a full-on business that helps to subsidize what they're doing for churches. So you're going to get the best deal for your church because restaurants and, souvenir shops and anybody else that's having this kind of merch printed up, they're helping to subsidize what Promotions Guy does for churches and ministries. So go to promotionsguy.com/church merch and see what they can do for your ministry. I promise
your executive pastor will love the budget you keep.
You will save so much money in your budget that your full ministry budget will be restored if
Increase.
you use church merch for your church. Del, what you got for us?
Our next letter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, this is a doozy. And if you work with within the church at all, especially if you're overseeing family ministries, kids ministries, this can't not be on the radar. So this one came in. Let me just read it to you. And if you're listening, you can just go and react in your head what you would do first. And then Jeff's going to give us the right answer. So here we go. We have a guy who started attending late last year. He's been leaning in. He got baptized, and it seems like he's really integrated well. However, a family in the church recently brought to my attention that he's on the sex registry. I looked it up, and it's a first-degree felony from about 20 years ago. Here's the kicker. It involves a minor under 13. None of us in leadership knew. He isn't serving anywhere, but obviously we have to move on this. We believe 100% that God's grace changes people, but we also have a massive responsibility to protect our kids and the rest of the church. I briefed our elders, and I'm planning to sit down with him soon. One of our elders is actually pretty close to him, so I'm having him join the meeting. We need to set up some restrictions on where he can go in the building and make it clear that he can't serve. Has anyone else had to deal with this situation? I'd love to hear what kind of specific no-go zones or restrictions do you currently have in writing? Do you require a chaperone at all times on campus for someone with this specific background? And how do you let family that inform you know it's being handled without gossiping? If you have a written covenant or a policy you've used at a high-level offense, I would love to see it. I want to see how you guys balance grace, safety, tension. Thanks. All right, so let's jump right into this one. I'm going to come back around, but Jeff, do you have any insight on this one?
I mean, I think the first thing is there is no statute of limitations on this kind of offense. And unfortunately, this person in my church will never serve with anyone under 18. That's just the reality of it. They're not going to pass a background check. I would be a little, depending on how long this guy's been at the church, it's, what did it say since last year or the new year? So he hasn't been there super long, but I would hope that they would have not led with this, but at some point we would have built a relationship enough that they would have informed us and we wouldn't have had to find out from another family. I would be interested to know, I'm going to assume for the sake of this conversation that the other family that informed us has kids that are underage, and it's not just like some other random adult. It could be, though, if it's from 20 years ago, it could be somebody that knew him back then. But let's, for the sake of argument, say that this is a family with kids. So they're obviously personally concerned about this. This is a really hard balance between forgiveness and welcoming into the body, and then the consequences of your actions staying with you. And this is one of those times when the consequences stay with you, even though the forgiveness is already there too. So we forgive you, you're welcomed into fellowship, but there are specific consequences, one of which is you can't be around kids alone. And that's just a hard, fast rule. Now, nobody should be with a kid alone in our building, except maybe like a parent helping a kid in the bathroom or something like that. But we should have a pretty strong policy where nobody is in any kind of private, closed off door with any kind of kid. And all of our volunteers are background checked and all those things happen. So yeah, you need to have something that's written. I think you need to come up with your elders with some kind of written plan for this specific person. I don't think you can start with a template of a plan, but I think every situation like this probably requires some kind of nuance. And if you have a written plan, be sure that at the bottom of it, somewhere in it, it says the elders reserve the right to change this plan without discussion at their discretion anytime they want. And that person knows that we can just decide, hey, you actually need more restriction, or maybe, hey, you need less restriction. There's plenty of places to serve in the church that don't involve kids or youth. And if there's not, make one. If this person wants to serve, figure out a way for them to serve that doesn't involve those things. And I would say in terms of communicating it with the family, I think that's a time when you need to communicate as much as you can, as clearly as you can, and emphasize the trustworthiness of the leaders in place and invite that family to ask any questions they want, with the caveat that we will answer as much as we can, as clearly as we can.
I think that's good. One thing I would just add on there is, even if he has a good relationship and everything, he already knows he's on the registry. So when this conversation comes, if he overreacts, well, then you already kind of know which way you need to handle this. But one thing I would just advise that was told to me is, when you have to sit down with this person, even if you have a good relationship, put it in your policy now that they are going to, if he's a covenant member of your church, or even if he's not, get him to sign an agreement. And that's just because you need to have a trail, and that'll also be another barrier in case he's where he shouldn't be or something happens. And that also puts it on a file in your church, which will do a good thing, because if leadership changes or something moves, if I'm a pastor coming into a new church, I want to say, hey, give me the important files I need to see. Oh, this is the registry. Okay, I should probably know about these things. So I would get him to sign it. And you don't have to make that super awkward. I don't know. It might have been 18. She was 13. I don't know. That's a big gap, and it shouldn't have happened. And it's 20 years ago. And so I think one of the things I would also ask when you sit down with him is ask for his story. I'd want to know how he processed this. I want to know how the Lord, if he's a believer now, which it seems he is, where is he going in his sanctification with this? If he kind of minimizes it, that's going to tell you a lot. But if he's like, yeah, this is where I messed up. This is the thing that God humbled me. Ask for his story before anything, and then that's going to lead you into a more personal conversation that you can have with him. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I agree with what you guys are getting at here. We have walked through this at Lakeview. And when we were made known of the situation, I did bring in the elders. I also went right to our head of safety to make sure he was aware. So he had some great advice. He just let his team know. So we didn't have to do this awkward chaperone, walk next to the guy the whole time. We just, whenever the guy was on campus, our safety team was well aware. They were briefed in advance. They had eyes on him. They're making sure there wasn't, any sort of movement towards the kids ministry area. I did loop in our kids ministry team. The individual did not attempt to serve, like you guys said. I think they know they wouldn't pass a background check, and we do require a background check for serving in any area with minors. I just looped in our student ministry team and our kids ministry team. Let them know, hey, if you are approached about serving, that's not going to happen. I don't know that they will approach about that, but. I think there was somewhere in this comment that said not serving at all. I don't agree with that. I think there are areas where you could actually have this person serve that doesn't involve them being.
I read it just that they're not serving yet. I didn't read it as they were restricted from serving.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think you can absolutely find a place for this person. Del, I love the idea of that. Have that initial meeting so there's no secrets, surprises. Talk through it. How are they processing it? That one. I mean, we have done that. But it wasn't right up front right away. And we probably should have done that right away. That might have made things a little bit easier going through this process before. But just looping in the right people at the right time and making sure they're aware. The last thing we'd want is for any family to accuse us of knowing something and not saying something. I do like the idea of making sure the family that notified you is well involved in the process, that you took this serious, that you went to leadership, that this isn't something you play around with as a church. This is not something we joke around with. This is very serious. So I think there are ways to handle this appropriately while at the same time knowing there could be serious restoration here and redemption. This could be a beautiful story. But yes, as Jeff said, your decisions have consequences. Some of those, they're going to go with you for life.
One thing I just want to add, you do not want to be the person who gets seen as someone bearing this information, whether it's unintentionally or intentionally. That doesn't mean we broadcast it out, but we have to have a we handled it approach. First church I ever served at, one of the adult leaders in student ministry was having an affair with an adult leader in the kids ministry, and they both had wives and kids. It was brought to my attention. I sat down with the pastor. He said, I'll handle it. We brought them in a room together. They denied it, but it was obvious. One of our students saw them kissing. So it was obvious that they were having an affair, and these people were in their 50s. And the pastor just says, you will not speak to this about anything. And he told me I couldn't say anything. He said he would handle it. And then he didn't, right? And then another one of my students found out because affairs spread, right? The rumors. And then I'm getting a call from a parent furious at me. Why are you keeping this information? Meanwhile, the lead pastor had buried it. It's about 3 months later that I ended up applying at a different church. But
that's when you bring it up angrily in a meeting, in a business meeting.
Yes. Well, they're having an affair. So and then he was eventually
someone
fired.
who serves in your ministry to bring it up. Yeah, that's the
that's
but
the move. That's
obviously,
the move.
he about not much longer after I left, he was eventually fired. This was part of the thread that began to pull at his character, that he was bearing stuff like this because he was like, this will destroy the ministry. It'll destroy the ministry, stuff like that.
Yeah, hiding it. Yeah.
Can I add something here that I think is probably a challenge more for my size church, maybe Andrew? My church is the smallest of the four of us by far. And I think one of the challenges in our situation, for a situation like this, is that we have rooms that are multi-use on a Sunday morning. So there isn't a room that is just for the kids. There is a nursery, but where our kids do children's church is the fellowship hall. And you have to go through the fellowship hall to get to the kitchen to set up the coffee that's in the lobby. So this is where, if you have a policy that anyone in one of those controlled spaces with kids has to be background checked, that means you're probably going to have to background check, in our case, like Miss Sandy, who helps do the coffee on Sunday morning but doesn't serve in children's ministry. Because if you don't, you're creating the loophole of, oh, well, we know Miss Sandy, she's fine to go with the kids. And this is the kind of loophole that if this person is still kind of like in their sin of predatory behavior, they will build a relationship, look for that loophole, and it'll start to be, oh, well, we know, whatever his name is, Bob. We know John. He's cool. He's been coming to church for a couple of years. He's fine. We don't need to worry about him. And that's how they start to gain access, and that's how it happens over the long term. So if you're going to have a policy where everybody that is in contact with kids in a controlled space has to be background checked, then that might mean you have to spend the money to background check everybody on the coffee team, everybody in the greeting team, so that you can maintain that level of, a carefulness with it. So that, because the reality is nobody that isn't background checked should be where the kids are.
Yep.
If that's your policy. So if that's the
And
case,
it might be expensive.
It will be worth every penny.
Not nearly as expensive as a lawsuit.
Yeah. Not nearly as expensive as a church closing when you're a small church and the media gets a hold of it and everybody leaves.
Yeah.
Like that's the reality of what could happen. So you can't allow there to be loopholes. And even as we're talking, I'm thinking, my head is spinning of like, ooh, we probably should background check these 2 or 3 people. And also be more strict with your rules. Because Andrew, in a small church, the people that have been coming there for a long time, in a good way, they feel almost like this is their home. They can walk through any door. But there are times during a Sunday morning when you can't walk through this door anymore, because this door leads to the fellowship hall where the kids are, and you're not background checked. And you're going to have conversations with people who feel a little bit offended that, like, what are you saying? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm trying to keep your grandkids safe. And make sure that there's no loopholes for a situation like this to happen.
Yeah, we've started to lock our fellowship hall during our service, and we do the full meal after church each and every week. And so there are people that, they've got to get something out of the oven, or they want to set, they want to leave during the last song to set something up, but the fellowship hall is locked because we have our elementary kids ministry in there.
Dude, we need to do that. That would keep people from leaving early. That's amazing.
No, it doesn't. They just go to the kitchen door.
And we're not opening the doors till we collect 40 grand.
They go find Miss Betty, who they know that has the keys to everything.
That's the other thing, is everyone who's been a member for more than 6 years has a key, probably. So there's that to contend with. But the 2 thoughts that I've had listening to this is, first, when you reach out, you send that text message, that email, that phone call, saying to this John Doe, hey, let's have coffee. He knows what this meeting is about.
He's going to know.
The second you reach out and say, hey, let's do this, he knows exactly what this meeting is about. And the way that the meeting is going to go will be determined by whether or not he shows up. If he shows up to this meeting knowing what the meeting is about to be about, then you're good. You're not good, but chances are his spirit is contrite. He is ready to do what needs to be done to be a part of the body and to be a part of the fellowship of your church. He gets it. He knows what needs to be done. If he's making excuses and he's ducking you and he's not showing up at this meeting, that's a huge red flag. Thing is, I've been at a church where this has happened, and we had a chaperone. The church I served at previous to this was in a part of the county that was very affluent, except for there were like 2 little blocks of, and I'm not trying to disparage trailer parks, but there were a few different trailer parks that were not deed restricted, where you could be on a registry and live there, and they were within walking distance of the church. It happened multiple times that someone showed up, and sometimes we'd be like, hey, can we have this meeting? And they didn't show up to the meeting, and then after that, they didn't show up to church. But there was one guy who, he was like, I completely get it. You tell me what I need to do. And, safety teams weren't quite a thing yet. That's definitely not at this church. And so we had a system where someone who was an elder, and it was like a buddy system. When he was coming to church, he would text this guy, and the guy would meet him in the parking lot, and they would walk in together. And let me tell you, they became the best of church friends, because whenever the one guy was there, the other guy was there, or if he wasn't, they would arrange for something else. And they started to serve together. Again, not with kids, not in any area where there would be food, but there was a ministry that we had that did dinners for people that needed food, and he would serve in the kitchen. And he would serve with this other guy. When a hurricane came through, again, we're in Central Florida, they would be the ones helping to clean up both the church, but also we had a bunch of little ladies, and they would be the ones out there in the yard. And eventually, the guy who was on the registry, he got sick and passed away. And at this, I'm gonna like tear up telling the story. At the funeral, the elder who was assigned to be his watchdog, to be his buddy, gave just this most amazing eulogy and this testimony of grace and what this did. And he talked about how, he signed up for this relationship thinking that it was his way of serving the church, and it became one of the greatest things that God did for him. Seeing the reconciliation that this guy experienced in life and seeing him serve and own what he had done and why there are certain things that he couldn't do. And it was this beautiful testament of what God can restore. And had he not been willing to have this difficult conversation, and had he not been willing to step up and say, hey, when I am at church, I'm not just sitting with my wife. I have a new buddy that I've got to track, and I've got to know when he's going to the bathroom. And it was, a similar crime to the one described in this. And what came out of that was not just a friendship, but the kind of camaraderie and brotherhood that can only happen when people's faith are attached to that relationship, and it's a growing and sanctifying thing. And God used a really awful situation to bring this relationship that transformed both of these men's lives out of it. So I don't think the buddy system or a chaperone is overreacting. In fact, I think if you let it, God can do really impressive and amazing things through these relationships. And you're going to know what that person's heart is. And they don't have to be ready to sign on for a lifelong best friend right away. They have to be open to saying, yes, I'm going to submit to whatever the church leadership decides. I know that I've put myself in this situation, and I want to be a part of this community, so I'm going to do what needs to be done. And God can use that to make really cool things happen. That's the end of my soapbox. What do you guys have?
It was a really nice soapbox.
Thank you.
On the other end, and I guess we'll kind of wrap with this, but Tim made a very important thing I don't want to gloss over. Background check, everybody, please. And the reason is you are fortunate enough to have this family to let you know this guy's on the registry.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a blessing. That is grace given to you. I had someone at a church I was at, they wanted to serve. And I said, they would come to church, started attending or joining. I said, all right, well, let me get you a background check. He got real quiet, just kind of stepped back. He goes, oh, I'm not going to pass that. And I said, is there anything we need to talk about? He goes, I'm not going to pass that. Then he backed off. Of course, I informed the leadership, and come to find out he was like that. So I noticed he had talked to a student. So I had told the student's parent, hey, this guy came, he talked to this student, and he was probably 20 years older than her. I said, you just need to be aware. They said, thank you, we're aware. And they for that. Well, comes to find out, I guess they had met before church somewhere else, and he was a predator. He ended up convincing this student he was her biological dad. And mom wakes up, she's not in the house. She was down the road with her bags packed, ready to get picked up by him in the middle of the night. So adopted dad went out there with a shotgun and got his daughter back.
Good for dad.
Yeah, good for dad, But the good news is, because we asked for a background check and we informed them, they immediately knew the situation whenever things were going on, and she was able to be safe. So please background check your leaders. That's more of a plea than a practical thing.
Yeah, and if you're in doubt, like, I don't know if I should background check this person. They serve in the greeting team, but they're around the kids. Just background check them. It doesn't cost that much money.
Yeah, it is worth every penny for that peace of mind. And there are also some real creeps out there that for whatever reason have not been arrested, and they could sneak through. So just be vigilant. As a church, both of these issues that we are discussing today, they come down to protecting the flock, right? Like our job, we were in John 21 when Jesus said, feed my sheep, protect my lambs. Like that's our job. We are supposed to be protecting the flock that God has entrusted to us. And sometimes that means we have to have awkward conversations. Sometimes that means we have to confront another shepherd for lying or for misleading people. And sometimes that means we have to have the real awkward talks with people that are part of the flock, because for the betterment of everybody else, we have to make things a little bit awkward with them. That's what we're called to do.
and
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah. And for their own sanctification and
Yes.
edification.
Like I feel like that gets lost a lot. We're protecting the congregation from a predator, let's say, but we're also helping make sure that predator doesn't go back into their sin.
Yeah, that is what we are called to do. And if you don't like doing those things, go sell insurance. There's a whole lot of other
Amen.
things you could be doing. But if you're not willing to do the work of ministry, and it's not just holding hands with a little old lady and praying sometimes it is flipping over the tables and doing the dirty work. When I say dirty work, not unethical, but doing the uncomfortable work that needs to be done in ministry for the betterment of the church that God has entrusted to you for a season. It's not your church, it's his. And if you are not taking care of it, he's going to find someone else who will. So be willing to do this work, be willing to have these conversations so that the gospel can be proclaimed and we can see the kind of life change that we're just talking about. Anybody else have anything they want to throw in here?
I just want to reiterate what Andrew said. If you don't like it, get out. That's pretty much what Andrew said, and I appreciate that.
I'm in. I love everything.
Well, fellas, we want to encourage everybody listening to go ahead and join the Practically Pastoring Facebook community. We're guessing that if you're listening, you're probably already there, but I'm also guessing that you've got some buddies in ministry that are out there on an island trying to do ministry all by themselves without the resources and the camaraderie that 1,300 other like-minded pastors can bring. So if they are looking for a place where they can ask these questions and they can have these conversations, there is no better place than the Practically Pastoring community. Both of these questions today come right out of that community, and we would love for more people to be a part of that community.
I also say this, if you have a church safety or security specific question, shoot us a DM. We have a great relationship with Trinity Security Allies. The owner and founder of the nation's largest church safety firm goes to Lakeview and specifically said, mention us on your podcast. We will take care of any pastor that comes into contact with us that lets us know that you guys sent them our way. So they'll take care of you guys. Like free consultations, all that stuff.
He has come out to our church just to walk around and say, hey, do this, do this, do this. It's brilliant.
He's flying to Ohio next week because of someone on this podcast. They reached out to him and he's flying up there.
Sweet, dude. That's cool.
So his name is Jim Howard, Trinity Security Allies. Great guy, former cop, loves Jesus.
Detective.
Detectives are cops, but he's that level and is just the kind of brain that thinks differently than a pastor. Because sometimes as pastors, we want to see the best in people. And sometimes as detectives, they're programmed to not see the best in people. And you need both perspectives. So reach out to Jim Howard, Trinity Security Allies, and ask this kind of question. And he is a great resource and a friend of the pod and of the entire Practically Pastoring Facebook community. So, hey, take care of the flock that God has entrusted to you. Feed his sheep, protect his lambs, and we will see you next week. Bye, y'all.
See ya.